Hey, how y'all doing? Okay, let's do this to it. Okay, dokie. Remember we said that we were going to get into the section imbalance, the part of the book, the imbalance versus material. The following game, a very complex one. C Black chatting with two trains of thought. One, uh, one thought, or as I like to say, he says two devils. I'll say two angels. He has two angels on each one of his shoulders, and one of them says to basically go for a sacrifice. In this position here, this is what it's saying. I'll have to set up the board and get to the part where they're saying, because it'd probably be better for us to have that to take a look at what they're talking about. Let's get the players' names in, and then get them moving on it. Okay, got that. Got that. Perfect. Okay. We'll get to the point, then we'll read about what section we're talking about here. Okay, C4, G6. Oops, I have to enlarge the board so that there we go. So now it fills up the board, so it's a lot easier for us to talk about more positions. This is actually a mistake here. It's called the English opening, the Great Snake Variation. Queen B6, Knight C3, C takes, Knight D5. Okay, this is really interesting here. This is we now can talk about how in this position here, because we got to it. The following game, a very complex one, sees Black basically looking at two ideas. One is unbridled sacrifice, and the second one tells Black to go for humongous everything, basically throwing the kitchen sink and everything in, and sacrifice his queen. The other idea, take it while you can, implies Black to eat a pawn on B2, basically like we like to say Pac-Man. Black could take this pawn on B2 here. Boom. Or what he could do is allow the queen to be taken and then basically go for everything. In this sharp position, Black can embrace his inner greed by playing, if he wanted to, bishop, queen takes B. But he actually did this really interesting. There is no mark. He plays this here. I only have interesting, but he has exclam, double exclam, in question mark, and I'll just do an interesting moves because I don't have another exclam. So it's kind of like a brilliant, interesting move. So See, black could have did the inner greed that we talked about, and had taken here rook b1, queen takes a2, rook a1, queen b, rook b1, queen a3, knight c8, king d there, knight b5, queen c5, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen a5 check, king e2, and then knight to f6. And though white has some compensation, he's 2 pawns down. So even though white has some compensation, he's 2 pawns down in this variation. There is nothing wrong with embracing your inner greed, Jeremy Summit says. In fact, taking material and daring your opponent to prove his compensation puts a lot of pressure. Puts a lot of pressure on him, since to put, let me see here, to put in a stake, a sharp manner. Basically, let me see, is that? Yeah, I think that's it. If the sacrifice doesn't work, the game is over. So if this sacrifice that Mayo, no, I appreciate that. The most famous greed kings are the most famous greed kings, basically like grandmasters. Was Larry Evans, that's what he says, and Victor Korchnoi. Those extremely successful players would take whatever was given to them, was ever offered, and then hang on for dear life, and try to survive, basically. However, in this position, black noticed a far more creative but not necessary superior position. So he did a really interesting move here. After this, he didn't go for the inner greed. He went for number one, which was all, as I like to say, all guns blazing. He went for everything on this one. Knight takes, so white's like, okay, thank you for the queen. And Mr. Mayo said that this is I'm all in, so he has to take. King takes f2. And it takes, okay, king takes f2. Oh, right, and then a takes b. That's right. White has a queen. This is has black gone berserk? Just one. I'll take 1 sec. We'll think about it. Alright, so that it's kind of like white. White has a queen and the move for 2 minor pieces and a pawn. Yet white's position is far from easy to handle. Let's have Mr. Mayo himself explain his logic behind his d takes e back here, right here. D takes e3. This is what he says about it. For the queen, black has an ultra safe king. Basically, black has an ultra safe king. There's no infiltration points after this. So after takes, the king is purely safe. Black, two minor pieces, an extra pawn, plus almost total dark square control. Because remember, the dark squares are gone off the board. Yes, white has a queen, but remember, a queen can't win a war by itself. It has to have friends and coalitions of forces to win. Also, considering the lovely dark squares black gets for his minor pieces, he has e5 for black has e5, e6, c5, and c6. These are the squares that, and even d4 would beckon to be a piece to be deployed there. White has a displaced king because the king's off. White's king's off, and basically it went after a soldier. It got the soldier, but at the cost of revealing itself to the whole world. Basically, I mean, it's not behind its castle walls anymore. You have to, you know what, sometimes kings get a little too adventurous. This white king, basically, that's what Mr. Mayo is saying, is that this king has ventured out too far and he'll be weak. He won't have any forces enough to protect him, and the soldiers will hunt down the king, basically. And black's king is well fortified. It has tons of guards. There's nothing that's going to infiltrate that. And the king's telling all of his soldiers, go out and attack. I'm fine. I am safe. I have enough foot soldiers to protect me. Nothing's getting through. So by all means, with a blessing, basically, go out and take out white's king. That's kind of what you can kind of sense in this position, that white's the one who has to be on guard. Even though they're up a queen for a bishop, a knight, and a pawn, still the king's safety and checkmate's the whole goal. So we'll get back, okay. White has a displaced king, developmental indeficiency, and a horrible light square bishop with no active participation at all, because of the pawns are on light squares, so this bishop is not even participating one bit. He is faced with the imminent loss of two more pawns with bishop takes one second. With bishop takes b2, and so is queen is confined to the defensive duty. Let me see here. He's faced with immediate loss of two more pawns. Bishop takes b2. This is what he's talking about. Bishop takes b2. Because I want to give visual example, and so his queen is basically confined to defensive duty. One other critical factor to consider is that white does not have a single effective pawn lever. Basically, a pawn lever is an ability to open up the position. To open up the position, and to make it so that there is some way in the world that white can get to the king. At his disposal, he does not even have the prospect of any active exchanges sacrifices to alter the position either. So he doesn't first of all have any pawn levers. What that means, we already talked about it, to take out, make spots for the king to be weak. None of that. He doesn't even have any piece exchange sacrifices that could help in that scenario. Nothing is here to help him, so he's in trouble. Even exchange sacks, there's no exchange sacks, which we've learned that it was a game by Peter's Fiddler. He did an exchange sacrifice. We went over that game. That was 2 days ago, and it's very similar to that, what they're saying there, but there is none. Does black have any pieces? Does white have any rooks out to do any piece exchange sacrifices? No, 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 no. To alter the position, only perhaps passive sacrifice with rook d5 could potentially happen at some future point. So if like a knight got to d5, this rook on a1 potentially after the queen moves could sacrifice for the knight, but why would you really want to do that? Or I mean, sorry, if the knight got to d5, but the knight got to d4, that's what I mean. Why would you really want to do that? I don't like it actually. So in short, black's pieces will all be more active than white's. White has no way to break into the enemy position. So white has no way to break in the enemy position, and black has virtually has various targets. Black has various targets all over the board. He's got the pawn on e4, pawn on c4, b2, the king. Maybe when the bishop on f1 moves, g2 will be a severe weakness. He's even attacking a2, so if the rook ever moves from a1, the rook could come in and grab a2. Black's with all the attack. Squares and pawns. Okay, black has virtually various targets, squares and pawns, that he can basically take on, while the white position is devoid of any plans. Basically any plan. What he's trying to say is black could take the pawns like we just talked about. White has no plan. What is white going to do? It's kind of like he's up material but no plan, and sometimes that's a very dangerous predicament to be in, because even though you have a lot of weaponry, if you don't have targets to use it on, but your opponent has all the targets in the world, it's like, ugh. What am I going to attack if there's nothing to attack? It is clear that Mr. Mayo has a very good grasp on the imbalances and how to measure their pros and their cons without falling victim to purely material point count consideration. So what he's trying to say here is Mr. Mayo knows that yes, a queen's worth 9 pawns. Yes, he got basically 7 pawns for the queen, but for the compensation of the queen, our opponent, we deprived our opponent of all counterplay. And so those pieces that our queen that we sacrificed wasn't worth the value that it was. I guess I'm going to say the value of 9 pawns or 7 pawns. It was less than that, because positionally that bishop and knight and pawn, and then removing the king so it can't castle, was greater than even the value of the queen in positional points, if you want to think about it. Okay, I can imagine many of you saying nice, but I could never do anything like that. Basically, he says, I can imagine us saying nice, basically say nice, but I could never imagine doing that. Basically, that's what he says, and I'll reread it one more time so you can get it. Okay, I could imagine many of you saying nice, but I could never do anything like that. I could never do anything like that. And he asked this, why not? Yes, you have to somehow free yourself of the I can't mindset, which is also explored in part 4. But once you notice that D takes C back here, this back here, D takes E3, and once you see that all be given up, sorry, and once you see that you'll be giving up your queen for 2 minor pieces and a pawn, don't panic and say, no way. Instead, calmly look at the imbalances in the resulting position, and if you appropriately if you appreciate what you are getting for the material investment, many positional imbalances for material. Why not put the trigger? Why not pull the trigger and do it? In fact, if you really want to improve, you should always jump on such situations, win or lose, so you can explore your chess mind, expand your chess mind, and plant the seed for further future successes. So, interesting, huh? Oops, 1 second. I have to just check 1 second, make sure. Yep, there we go. That's right. This is what he says to remember. If you create imbalance, imbalanced vision, and make the search for the understanding of it, the imbalances, in addition, your play strength will take a quantum leap forward. Basically, yeah. So you have to think about that. About how you have to take the imbalances that what what Mr. Mayo said. Sorry about that. And you have to remember that to get that mindset of the imbalances, not be so concerned about material. No, that was a joke. That was not a joke. I mean, I made a mistake there. That's actually his last name. I don't know what his first name is. It's A Mayo. That's they dot Mayo. So I'm not sure. This was a game I really haven't been able to find it. It's in Jeremy Silman's book, so it may be out there somewhere. But in the game, Mr. Mayo concept came through with flying colors. So this idea of that is coming through with flying colors. So let's take a look to see how it came to pass. So queen d2, knight c6, knight f3. There's really not much that white can do here. Black's just going to unwind, outdevelop his opponent. Knight g4, checking, in comes king e2. Black castles, h3 to attack the knight. Knight g to e5. Knight takes. You're thinking, wait a second, isn't he there we go. He said, isn't this going against our principle of basically trading down when you're down material. You're not supposed to do that. But remember, what was Mr. Mayo's idea, or Black's idea? We'll just say Black, so don't make a mistake. What is Black's idea here? Is his idea is to not have any White have any counterplay. So White doesn't have any levers or pawn breaks, as we say in chess. No ability to do any exchange sacrifice, which means kind of just trade down even at the exchange of a rook for a knight, just to kind of calm the position down and try to basically build up counterplay and unwind his position. White doesn't have any of that. And so the knight for White was really active. And so even at the cost of trading down, which in theory violates our principles of when you're down material, you don't trade down pieces. This makes sense because remember, Black is using imbalance, the imbalances principle. He's not using what we think of as material count, because material count so that it will distract from our understanding. So when you start improving, Jeremy Silmid says imbalances will start being part of you. It's I always think of when they have an app store and they think that you can add an app to your phone or an app to something that'll help your machine maybe do better, maybe you can look up things more. If you add the app of an imbalance to your chess vision, you will be able to see greater moves, and you'll get to someday make those double esclam moves, and you'll be like, wow, I see it now. And it all's because you were able to, we can say, add the app of the imbalance to your vision. Okay, after the exchange, knight takes. Okay. Hold on, did I? So it's not. Oh, it's a check here. Okay. Okay, I had the wrong move. Sorry about that. King F2. Now the bishop takes. Okay, this makes more sense. Rook H to F1. White's trying to castle by hand to get safe. And then D6. Now the other bishop is going to start flooding into the position, and Black might be the one that has potentially a piece sacrifice to tear the position. So that's so D, King G1. Okay, White is H. I'll just spell out his name. Uetoa. I don't know how to pronounce that. And it's Black is A Mayo. So that's who this game is between. And the cool thing is, Black sacrificed. We're learning about imbalances, the power of imbalances. Black sacrificed for a bishop and a knight and a pawn for his queen, but it neutralized all of White's counterplay, piece sacrifices. White has no ability for pawn breaks. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just amazing. Okay. Okay. Good. But it's just amazing how well of a I call it he's downloaded the app of his imbalance to his vision so that he can see how Black can see this, or Mr. Mayo can actually see this position. And it's just incredible how they judge it. It's like, wow, you don't get to have that every day. It's a yeah, I just use the idea. I'm using the idea as an example, the app idea, so that we can take it and use it for ours, because we have to, as chess players, we have to take and learn the imbalances. And I know that we were talking about how apps help. Oh, no, 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 no. No, I just used that as an example. But it would be nice if there was an app like that. uh, I'd most definitely be studying on that. So maybe someday there will be. You never know. Even at the cost of a pawn, uh, this actually is really interesting. This takes here is a if you had if you missed that, this it would be sad, because then there goes your queen. So this indirectly protects the b6 pawn. Queen b5 to kind of, this is the what was actually played in the game. Oops, a5. There we go. And then queen b3 is, this is a really interesting move there. Now the wow, this is just very impressive. The next move I see for Black is potentially probably maybe b4. a3. This is to stop that. So white's basically in what Jeremy Silmick calls reactive chess. Boom, there's b5. Queen c2. And then you take bishop e2. I'm wondering what would happen if he took there. I'm thinking if bishop takes here, maybe there's something to do with I don't think it's a pawn push. Maybe it's a check. Yeah, I'm thinking that there's something. I'm thinking it has to do. Oh, a pin. Okay. A pin. Gotcha. Okay. That's the reason. And then if this is played here, then you attack. Okay. Gotcha. Then you attack there, and it's okay. Gotcha. Wow. That is really good of a move by Black. Bishop D. So in comes the check. So now the king's gonna feel a lot of the. There's no more breaks, so no pawn breaks at all. So it's only Black that has the chance of winning here. This is amazing. I you just gotta love these type of games. It's like, wow. See, he's attacking here, but that's not a problem. Bishop c5 just comes back and guards. Every loose end is tied up for black. Rook f, e1, and then b5, and wow. I haven't seen, this is pretty good of neutralizing all counterplay. I haven't got to see a game this well played for black in a while, man. This is great. It's always it always brings a tear to one's eye when you get to see the beauty of some of these chess moves. Rook a4. The idea is black's going to try to break through with b4 here. This is an interesting position because then if pawn takes, the bishop takes, and a piece will fall at that point. Oops. Piece falls because of that. That's a really deep calculation. No, it's not too deep, but it's really interesting. Yeah. So the rook has to move. That's if you're wondering why the rook moved, that's the reason for that move. So b4, and here comes break number one, and then rotates b4. The bishop to bishop takes b4 isn't as strong anymore. This allows for now the potential to double on the b file, and then win white's last pawn on the queen side, which then would create a passed pawn for black. And if black could do that, then really there's no, in my opinion, I don't think there's any chance that white has any hope of winning once the b pawn falls. It's pretty impressive how a couple moves can neutralize the whole entire game. You don't get to see that every day. Alright, he's trying to take the open file, and black's like, that's fine. And rook at a2. Rook b3, queen d2. I knew it was play okay. Our play okay. I knew for sure about that. Didn't act the same. Queen d2 to kind of hold on. White's got to hold on to that. If white doesn't hold, basically, team, if white doesn't hold b2, game is over. I know it's kind of like, how can you judge that? How can you judge that the loss of b2 is game, set, and match? Well, it's just white doesn't have anything after that. This is the only pawn that's holding back black's onslaught onto the king, and it surprisingly, a new player into the chess world would say, but why can't I just attack? I'm down a queen, there's not much I could do. But this passed c pawn will become a nuisance for white to deal with, and that's the whole idea, that when one pawn becomes a nuisance, you can then work around this to get your pieces to better squares and win. Many games have been won because of one passed pawn that was a nuisance throughout the entire game. So queen, let's see here. Okay, rook e2, or e3, rook e3. The interesting thing is, I'm going to probably say that he's going to try to double on the third rank, and potential some type of sacrifices will happen on h3. That's how I'm judging the position. That's I haven't really looked at this game, so I'm not exactly sure how it actually proceeds. But if I were black, that's kind of the move sequence I'd be going down. See, he's forking the bishop and the pawn, so the queen has to react to that. c3. B takes. And then a piece falls. Do you see how for the c pawn, now black is starting to get material slowly back. Black is starting to get the material back. Queen takes A, and then rook takes c3. Now that pawn's off the board. Surprisingly, black has 4 units. Yes, white has a queen, but remember, white only has 3. Let's see, where are we? 35. Sometimes I gotta keep my make sure I'm staying on track there. Bishop g4, rook e3. Black doesn't want to trade any more pieces. Black's actually in a really strong position. There's no reason to trade any pieces, especially when there's a threat of this here. The knight is doing a much better job than the bishop, so black's not going to trade off for that inefficient bishop. Bishop e6. Surprisingly, white's trying to counter sacrifice to get the position going. Rook f8. Bishop d5. See, if we took at this point, the queen could take. If the king moves, the queen could take here, and then potentially some counterplay could be acquired. But I really don't even see that that's really necessary to do. So white judges it. So I think that's the whole idea, is he wants to be able to move the knight. Yeah. King g7. But you have to always remember, when we're dealing with imbalances, you have to think about, is the piece, remember we talked about, they have a term for a good bishop and a bad bishop. Jeremy Silman has 3 terms for it. A bishop that's active, a bishop that's useful, and then a bishop that's a tall pawn, which means it's trapped inside its own structure and can't really do anything. So you have to always think, is the queen a useful piece? So you can even measure the queen by a bishop kind of standard if you wanted to, and say, is the queen useful here? Not really, if you think about it. Everything is eyeing the f7 pawn, but nothing can really dent that pawn. So who's really the one doing good right now? Black. So queen a6, and then e6. Bishop takes e6, f takes e6, rook takes f8. Wow. 3. So he did it. He acquired it. He's now in a 1 position at this point. Everything's protected. Wow, this is an amazing game. How he basically provoked white to go all berserk in the wrong direction and ended up losing. He's going to try what he's going to try to do. White is going to try to probably perpetual check, but black is saying to white, I have many ways out of perpetual. King e7, queen b, and then knight to d7. And it's almost, in my opinion, a game, set, match here. A lot of players don't like to check. Yeah, the game's going to be over pretty soon. King h2, bishop g1. Josh always talks about that in an endgame, Josh Waiskins, that you want to have your king come up to your position, and so that's what black is doing here. Black is pushing white up the board, up, up. He's pushing the king to come up the board all the way. So after bishop g, king there, bishop. Let me see here. King g. Rook. Oh, rook h1. Wow. Bishop d4. King h2. And then bishop e5. G3. And then rook e3. And there's really nothing that black's going to do. He can't even dent the king. The pawn's pinned. Everything's going to fall. So, wow. I want to see about this. I'm thinking that this loses as well with check. Check. If here, check. 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 Let's see, check. Maybe I'm missing something here. I think I am. I think I overextended. I want to keep the knight there. I like my position. I'm thinking bishop h2 is better here. Yeah. So that's good. Oh, okay, h6. Okay, and that shuts down all counterplay. Okay. Okay, so this is the move that wins on the spot. And then here, then you take there. Ah, there you go. Okay. Let's take a look at this here. Basically, if they, we're gonna have to put black is winning here. Let me do this. Hold on. And then only move so that you know that this is the only move here. Okay. Let me make sure. Did I do that right? Okay, perfect. That's the right square. I'm thinking rook takes is winning. Yeah. This actually deprives black of everything. And the next idea is here. And so probably the queen's gonna have to sacrifice for the bishop. Yeah, I was looking at this. This is what the queen would have to do. And then what you do at this point is you don't just take the queen, you win a pawn, and after the king takes, the knight will take here, and the game is won at that point. Really interesting. See how we're doing on time. Oh wow. This was a longer game. Okay, here's this is what he Jeremy Silman talked about right after this. I just wanted to go over this game. At this point here, we're going to go back to where the game ended right here. This is very advanced stuff, he says. But don't but it wasn't about calculating at all. This wasn't about calculating at all. Ultimately, it came down to having faith in the power of the lesser pieces, basically. The imbalance over material. So this is what he's saying. I'll read it all together in one thing. Sometimes I break it up and we talk about it. Let's read it all in one context. So I'm just going to read it straight to you. This is very advanced stuff, but it wasn't about calculating at all. Ultimately, it came down to having faith in the power of the lesser pieces, basically. Imbalances over material. So imbalance over material. And this concept that you can slowly but surely train into your basically psychology of chess at almost any rating level. So he says you can take this and slowly but surely train this into your subconscious, so that when you look at a game now, you're no longer looking at it for how many pawns do I have, how many pieces do I have. You're looking at it for positional understanding. Is it okay to trade a queen for a bishop and a knight and a pawn if my opponent can't get any counterplay, and basically his position's gonna fall apart? My opponent doesn't have any pawn breaks. My opponent doesn't have any exchange sacrifices, and potentially, if the B pawn fell in the game and the players weren't as high quality as they are for players, black could have steamrolled white by that pass C pawn. So it's like, it's incredible how some players, they kind of you have to train yourself. It's kind of like you got to discipline your mind. And even in like maybe a 10 or 20 minute game that's online, you should say to yourself, I'm going to play a long game, and I'm going to look for imbalances, and maybe even trying to sacrifice material, maybe a queen for like what black did here, a queen for a bishop and knight and a pawn. And you make that your goal for every game that you play, to implement imbalance over material. And if you start doing that, trust me, you'll find that you'll improve dramatically as a chess player. My teacher taught me that you don't have to worry about the rating of what online, or just rating in the USCF or any of that stuff. about it improving if you keep the process of learning up, like what we're doing, and we're implementing our ideas. That's how your rating improves online and on the board. Okay, and we kind of covered what we just went over. So 1 second. Actually, let's do a quick. I always do a reread because it's always good. Sometimes the second time you get a little bit more out of it. I always find that. Okay, we're going to do a quick read here. The following game is a very complex one. So you'll see, remember we talked about how it's the difference between unbridled sacrifices that we just talked about, and about just taking material and holding on for, just holding on for the ride, as I like to say. And that's kind of what we looked at in this position is black could have actually grabbed the pawn and still been okay. Jeremy Silman said he would have been 2 pawns up. White would be down 2 pawns without any counterplay. But black judged the position, and I'm going to end on this thought here because I know it's like you're saying you're beating it into the ground, but sometimes you have to. And yeah, black went with the imbalances over material. And so just take that to heart a little bit. Work it in your games, even if you just play the computer and maybe at whatever level, and you just work on that before you venture out into online games. It just practice. Trust me, practice makes perfect. It truly is. Okay, we'll end on that. Wanted to thank you all for participating, logging on. Wanted to thank the monitors for helping with taking care of sometimes the disturbance in the chat rooms. I appreciate that you all do that, and thank you so much. And remember that chess is about improving and getting better, like what we just talked about. And that goes back to the Bruce Lee motto of taking what you know and applying it and being willing to do something with it. And you know what? That's the whole thing about salvation too. It's an important decision we all have to make, and that's why you have to receive Jesus as Lord and Savior of your life. It's because one day we all have to decide one day what we're going to do with the Lord Jesus Christ. Are we going to receive Him or reject Him? I pray that you receive Him and not reject Him. And it comes down to the Team Chess Cruncher motto of hanging up your coats, hanging up your hats, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley so says, serve the Lord Jesus, and as I say, God bless. I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, evening. Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. It will keep pushing forward, onward, and upward. Remember what Hannibal Smith said. We always end with this one thing. Even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. And we got to see it with black. And when you find that plan and you implement it and your vision improves in chess, like we're talking about, you get to say, I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, 2 thumbs up, hoorah. Be blessed, and I will see you tomorrow, team. Bye-bye, Team Chess Cruncher. Keep studying chess and balance over materials sometimes. Okay, hoorah. Bye-bye, team.